Pablo Picasso is recognized as the world's most prolific painter. He dedicated 78 years to his painting career, in which he created over 13,000 paintings, 100,000 prints and engravings, and 34 illustrations of his were used in textbooks and various textbooks. He also produced 300 sculptures and ceramic places. He was born October 25, 1881, in Malaga, Spain. He was from a middle-class family. His father was a painter and was known for his naturalistic depictions of birds. His father began teaching him to draw and paint at a very young age, and by the time he was 13, he was skilled has surpassed his father's. In 1895, he moved with his family to Barcelona, Spain. He was eager to attend the School of Fine Arts. Picasso and his family experienced the tragic death of his 7-year-old sister, Conchita. After her death, the family relocated and moved to Madrid. After the move, he applied to a Royal Academy of San Francisco. He completed a one-day entrance examination, which was typically given about a year for students to make. Picasso's early work reveals a creative pattern in which persisted throughout his long career. Between 1900 to 1906, he worked through nearly every major artistic style. Many of his inspirations came from artists, friends, and/or movements. Picasso's art periods, the very first period that he had was called the Blue Period. The Blue Period of Picasso is the period between 1900 to 1904, and when he painted essentially monochromatic paintings in blue and blue-green colors. Blue was chosen deliberately, deep and cold, signifying misery and despair. He believed that this would intensify the hopelessness of his figures, depicted of beggars, prostitutes, and circus folks. His work throughout this time contains objective, realistic, classicist, symbolistic, and surreal, and also abstract elements. La Celestina is a superb example of this depression throughout this period. This picture right here. This portrait is of an old-eyed woman dressed in somber color, drooping head, seated in an isolated position, and she is located in the middle of the canvas. Her face is painted in light colors, whites and grays, sharply contrasts with dark blue in the background. Gradually, Picasso's colors brighten in what is known as the Rose Period. His work throughout this time regains in a romantic quality. This period represents pleasant themes, clowns, harlequins, and carnival performers. The new subject of this new time period was portrayed of self-confidence and dignity. Picasso lightened up his color pattern with soft pinks, blues, reds, and greens in order to complete his images. In 1907, Picasso had come up with something that was new to the world at that time, which was known as Cubism. He wasn't the sole creator of the style. Georges Braque also had much to do with Cubism as much as he did. In order to create this style, Picasso used the geometry of Braque's facet paintings to create a style. To create a style that was abstract in essence. They reduced the subject form into basic geometric patterns in two-dimensional pictures. This is also known as an analytic cubism. In order to stay focused and not distracted from the structure at the end of the form, the density of the image at the center of the canvas, They simplified color palettes, creating a non-existence except for the use of monochromatic schemes and often brown, grays, and blacks. Pablo Picasso once said, "When I think about it, I'd say I'm an artist without style." Style puts constraints in the artist, forcing a single viewpoint on things upon him. The same techniques, the same formula, year after year, his entire life. This was definitely the case for Picasso. After World War I, he returned to move more into the traditional phase. This included neoclassical period. He created pictures dedicated to his first son. One of this artwork, which is the picture represented right here, is called The Woman in White. This was created in the year of 1923. This shows a woman clothed in classic toga-like white dress, resting calmly in a contemplative pose. Toward the end of the 1920s, Picasso drew his surrealist imagery techniques to make pictures morphed and destroyed. Although still living in France in the 1930s, Picasso was distraught over the Spanish Civil War in 1936. His famous work comes from this period. This picture right here is his well-known picture Guernica. This was done in 1937. This painting is his most powerful political statement, which demonstrates tragedies of the war and the suffering upon individuals that were faced within that time period. This is an oil painting done on a canvas with a black, white, and gray color palette. The painting is a symbol of humanity, brutality, and hopelessness of the war. Picasso's later years, throughout his later years, his final works of styles and devoting full energy to the work, his later work of art was more repetition in a creative device, creating whole series around a theme or compositional idea. He continued of his favorite themes and to work on more of a colorful and more expressive type theme. One of his final and well-known self-portrait was done with little less than a year before his death. This picture is the picture that I'm holding up right here, and this is called The Self-Portrait Facing Death. This was done in 1972. This portrait is what drew my attention to Picasso. This is a crayon-like figure image. It has a very rounded face. His nose is in the center of the painting, with large, thick outlines. Lines are used to show the shape of the face. Stringy black thin lines are used to represent the chest on his hair. It's used to represent the face on his chest and around his chin. White dots are used to represent his mustache. This facial image has a pink hair with different textures of either straight or black lines, all embedded within the watercolor-like picture. His eyes, nose, nostrils, and eyebrows are much larger than on a typical normal face. All features of the face are simplified. His mouth is just one of the straight, right here, his mouth is just kind of more of a straight yellow line. The face looks a little bit puzzled and almost as if the face is going insane. Picasso died a year after he conducted this painting. Picasso expressed himself unlike any other. He had a distinct style and a very artistic form. He discovered and identified a way to express uniqueness in his art. He did not use a very common technique or tradition. Instead, he demonstrated uniqueness. Picasso taught people that anyone or anything can be justified as art, and this is why I chose Picasso for my research.